Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. This is Rob Trump, your host. Let me just turn the music down so we just got a touch of it in the background. I talk. Well, today's episode is going to touch on, perhaps the most important and also perhaps the most controversial aspect of the Omnist belief. It touches on the challenges that all beliefs have and why we argue so much and fight so much and kill each other so much over beliefs. This topic is the topic of Trinity and how it relates to human relations, human power. Okay, so in a previous episode, we introduced you to the Omnist creation story, which involved primarily talking about how the first three souls came into being and created the original two sins through that process, which weren't really sins, they were choices that had consequences that had to be dealt with. And that kind of gives you an idea of what the difference between thinking of things in terms of sin versus thinking of things in terms of karma. Okay? We're challenged constantly with making choices. And even doing nothing is a choice and may have consequences. And karma, or what some religions call sin, is the consequences of our decisions. There are problems that come out of any decision that have to be dealt with. And essentially, evolution is the process of dealing with the problems created by decisions as we go along. And that's perfectly consistent with a scientific view of evolution. So, that's the thing about omnism. When you start thinking in this way, you'll realize that you can explain everything, at least to some level of detail, and be consistent with every belief system if you only can lose a couple of its false premises. Okay, so let's go back to this first trinity of the first three souls. This is a pattern. And if you talk to any scientist who looks at large systems, they will say that, oh, yes, there are patterns that repeat. And we don't know why, but there are patterns throughout all of creation. If you look at the structure of galaxies, if you look at the structure of the universe on a big scale, if you look at the structure of the human brain, if you look at the structure of things like DNA and complex molecules, they all have a certain symmetry, a certain pattern to them that seems to be dictated by some laws, some universal laws. And that's what has led people to pursue studying science. They figure if they can understand these patterns and make some sense of them, they might be able to understand why, which is what every seeker of knowledge has always wanted to know, whether they're pursuing it through a spiritual avenue or this scientific philosophical avenue. Okay, so Trinity is one of the most basic patterns there is. And what's the significance of it for humanity and human thought, human religion? Okay. Well, let's think about the fundamental numbers in terms of this original creation story. The number 0, you could think of as representing that time before the first creation, where who knows what happened there. God didn't exist. That's maybe one way to look at it. And there are certainly people that worship the religion of 0, who say there is no God. There's no creator, there's no order to the universe except what is dictated by the scientific laws we observe. If you knew every interaction going on, the trajectory of every particle, et cetera, every chemical interaction that could happen, you could explain everything that happens, and we're just destined to do what we do because of the chemistry of our bodies. This is the religion of scientific materialism, which is a religion of zero. Atheism is a religion of zero. Okay? There are religions of one. The religions that say we are all one, we're all part of one consciousness, we're all God. Those are religions of one. It's kind of the religion of an organization of hive-mindedness or political correctness that says there's only one way to think because that's the only thing that could possibly be true, and therefore anybody, but if somebody doesn't think that way, if somebody doesn't agree with me, something must be wrong with them. And then you get into the religions of two. Okay, if they don't believe my one, they must believe in some bad one, and therefore they're evil. And you get the religions of two. And the otherizing of anybody who doesn't agree with you, which I think most people will agree is the source of most of the trouble that our species has had over the eons. So what are the religions of three? Why do we have this concept of Trinity? Now, you see it in the Omnist story that I told you, the creation story. You see it in Christianity. Why is there a Trinity? It's been such a fractious thing. We've argued so much, Christians, about what Trinity is, what it means. Why does it exist? And some people think, they're just three aspects of one God. And, they're all really one God, but they're just, Okay, there have been other trinities too. Almost every messianic religion, and most religions to some extent, are messianic. They believe in some sort of a cycle and an event, which often is associated with the birth of a Messiah, that changes things and makes the future better than the past was. That's the nature of messianic religion, and almost all of them are based on some sort of a myth of a trinity. Isis, Osiris, and Horus. You name it. The Christ child is just an extension or a new telling of those old Trinity myths. Now, the Trinity conceived by the Catholic Church, being devised by a group of people who wanted to de-emphasize the female and demonize the female, was converted into a masculine or sexless Trinity. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. And the Holy Ghost was like the female spirit, but devoid of all the bad things in the female that we didn't want. But that's a Trinity too, and it's very important. All stable and lasting religions need to be based on at least a Trinity. That's where it all started. That's the pattern of stability. And that's the real story behind, you remember the symbol of the caduceus? Now it's misdrawn sometimes as a staff with a single snake around it. But if you look and find the origin of the caduceus, there's two snakes around a staff. And that is the symbol of the Omnist creation story I told you in another episode. The two snakes being the two first souls, which both had a heavy dose of the masculine will to create without the will to compromise, without the will to be patient in creation, which is what was added by the third soul, the primordial feminine, divine feminine archetype. So the staff represents the divine feminine. The snakes represent the two souls that preceded that. So the caduceus is the symbol of this state of the divine plan, the divine matrix, the divine fractal of the multiverse in this incarnation where there were three souls in a very early state. There's another good symbol that we might touch on here, which is the symbol of the yin-yang symbol of Taoism. Now, some of you might think that it's only two things going on in that symbol, but if you look closely at its original envisioning, the white and the black sides of the circle also have in their center an opposite color. So there are actually four elements in the Taoist symbol, not two, as some would have you believe, and some focus on it. Okay, this is just another representation of duality. No, it's a symbol of four, because there is this fourth soul that was born after the first three that represents the creation of the four-dimensional physical world. And that four-dimensional physical world is where we have this training system that allows us to experience things that aren't easy to experience in the physical world and learn lessons that would be hard to learn in the spiritual realms. So these two symbols are, they're right out of my Omnist creation story. That's how universal they are. And what humanity is stuck in right now is we have the vast majority of them embracing a belief system, a religion, a philosophy of one or two. We think of everything in terms of good or evil, or we think of everything in terms of there is only one universal. Anything that doesn't conform to that is going to that. Okay? And until you get to 3 and above, these are inherently very unstable and harmful ideologies. So the one all-powerful God ideology leads to the creation of an other, a Satan. It becomes a dualist religion, and dualists like to duel. They're constantly in conflict, battling with each other, arguing with each other, instead of trying to understand each other. Now, the unity religions are even worse. Communism is an ideology rooted in the claim of unity, that the good of all outweighs the good of the individual, and therefore the pure Communist Party can do whatever it wants for the benefit of all humanity, and they're justified because they are right. They're thinking of the greater good, however they define that. Now, those are very, very, very dark, wicked people, because nobody knows what the greater good is. God doesn't even know that. God is not all-knowing, all-powerful, all-seeing. God is just another soul, and is humble enough to admit that he doesn't know everything. That's why he gave everybody free will, so we could all figure it out together. We could all be part of creation and learn through this system of reincarnation how to make good decisions, how to make measured decisions. We don't know exactly what's the perfect thing to do. We don't know exactly what all the consequences of our decisions are going to be. But if we are humble enough and respectful enough of each other, we know which ones are really pretty bad decisions. Okay? It's a bad decision to lock people up if they have a difference of opinion with you. It's a bad decision to suppress people's freedom of thought, freedom of speech. Now, obviously, there are speeches and thoughts that can be dangerous. But let's talk about the dangers. Let's expose the dangers, not suppress the thoughts. Because the suppression of creation is what creates the tension that destroys. It's letting one of the snakes overrule the staff and the other snake. Creation only works when you keep at least 3 factors in balance, if not more. So Trinity represents the beginning of understanding of how to create responsibly. And the challenge that humanity is going through right now, and has been since it was cut loose to do a lot of its creation on its own, since the gods stopped making a lot of decisions for humanity and let us blaze trails and make ourselves gods and to come up with our own power plays and our own ideas of how to structure our societies. We've been learning how to be creators. And we've learned an awful lot, but we created a lot of dystopia, a lot of karma, because we have not embraced the lesson of Trinity. Look at your average Christian right now. How much do Christians ever talk about Trinity anymore? No, it's all about Jesus, 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 Jesus. Okay? This is dystopian. This is as bad as the Muslims saying everything is all about Allah and there's nothing but Allah and Allah's will is everything. And what you are doing is putting all the power into the hands of some created God that you made that supposedly can do anything they want and loves their chosen people, the ones that believe in Allah, the ones that believe in Jesus, the ones that believe in God, one God, and invests them with the moral justification to do anything they want because they think they're righteous in their beliefs. And that is why there is the counterculture now that's coming at Judaism with the religions of zero, which are really still religions of duality. There's no such thing as a religion of zero. There is no such thing as a real atheist. That's just another belief system, a belief in another God. If you take away the belief in the all-powerful God, the belief in any gods, what do you have left to believe in? Yourself. Atheism is a selfish religion. It's a religion that either believes in itself or it believes in one core thing that it hangs everything else onto. So you have some of these atheist believers that worship science. They think science has all the answers, and therefore scientists are the high priesthood of their religion. You have communists who believe that one party has all the answers, and therefore the party is their god, or whoever leads it. This is the truth of communism. I'm sorry, folks. You've got capitalists that believe that the pursuit of material gain is God. A very self-worshipping religion, isn't it? Or a self-deprecating religion. It's another pole of social Darwinism, which is a dirty amalgam of worship of science conflated with worship of the self. I do well because I am made better. I have worked harder, I have studied harder, and therefore I deserve it. This is what social Darwinism is. And this is a very evil force in our world today, because it's what causes people in power to think that they deserve the power, to think that they know more than anybody else and deserve to make all the decisions for everybody else. And this is going on all over the world right now. It's most apparent in communist China, but it's also very, very apparent in the organizations of national governments and the organizations of world governments. And if we don't check this error of the viewing of power as something good, as something noble, this species is not going to be existing much longer. Now, that's nothing to get riled up about. I mean, species come and go all the time. And in this physical world, all the species is a physical vessel for a soul to occupy and learn. So, I don't care if we blow ourselves up. I don't care if we put ourselves under one world government that is as dystopian as communist China. It's a choice. And you're going to learn something from it. It's not what I would want for humanity. Nobody wants to see others suffering, to see others downtrodden and oppressed. But they're going to be downtrodden and oppressed one way or another as long as humanity continues to view power as a virtue. Power is the source of all evil in humanity. It's not money, although money is a manifestation of power. No, it's power that is evil. I don't care how noble your motives, how lofty your ideals. If you think that concentrating power into the hands of one individual or one group is going to fix the world, you are part of the problem, not the solution. If we look at the systems of government that have been most successful for the longest period of time, what we discover is that the Republican principle, the principle of a republic, is actually a fairly good one. What is a republic? Res publica, the rule of the people. Now, that sounds like chaos, maybe, because people can't rule everything. We just have everybody break into the Capitol like we saw the other day, and it would be chaos. No, we need rule of the people that is structured. The rule of the people means that power is concentrated at the lowest level, consistent with getting something done, and setting up structures of power so it's distributed to the lowest level that is effective. And we don't concentrate it in the hands of a few or the hands of one. Every decent government, none have been perfect, but every decent government humanity has ever had has had as its principal goal distributing power and making sure it doesn't get concentrated in the hands of too few. And yet what we've got now is corporate elites, party elites who think, if we can only just get both houses of Congress and the presidency, we could solve every single problem. Bullshit. It never happened. It never will. Look at the states that have supermajorities of one party. California, Kansas, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is probably the best example of a Republican dystopia. It doesn't work. And as long as you keep thinking that one party is going to save you, one class, the corporate class, that big tech is going to somehow solve all of the problems and save us from our shortcomings as humanity, you're going to keep falling in the same molds. Okay? So think of things from the pattern of Trinity when you try to solve problems. Distribute power. If you've only got two parties, you need at least one more to have any semblance of a fair power structure. If you have, well, let's talk about the labor problem. Okay, corporations have an outsized amount of power and control over their employees. And the natural outgrowth of that was unions. But you know what happened? If you only think of it dualistically, as the corporation or the corporate leadership as the good guys and the union as the bad guys, or vice versa, you end up with this struggle between two powers that keep trying to get more powerful. And if you look at what's happened with labor in the United States, it's been very dystopian. We've got some very large labor unions behind a few industries. The public sector mostly is still what remains, and things like the Teamsters and whatnot. But the union bosses, the people that run the unions, have become so powerful that they don't actually represent their people anymore. And they're part of the same class as the corporate class. They go to the, they marry the same kids, they go to the same schools, and they think the same way, and leaving, the average worker without any representation. There are much better ways of conceiving that. I lived in Germany for a while, and they solved their labor problem by unionizing, requiring that any workforce with more than a certain number of workers had to have its own union. And they deal with things on a local, location by location basis. So when it comes time to close a plant, both the people working there and the management are in agreement that that's not good. And they will both be pushing against whoever's telling them that they have to shut down that plant and move it to Japan, instead of what happens in the U.S. so much now, that the union leaders and the corporate leaders have no interest in keeping the plants open. They'll protect their golden children by keeping some small plants open in the U.S. and move everything else overseas without batting an eye. And the people, the real workers, suffer. It's all an outgrowth of dualist thinking or oneness thinking. You got to get that out of your DNA, your thinking, and think in 3 and above. And that's a message that has been handed down to you from time immemorial. That's why there are so many trinities, and that's why every religion that's worth anything has something of a Trinity concept, has the concept of a Messiah. I think we've talked about that enough for the day. I hope that was instructive. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, comment, tell me I'm full of shit. Doesn't matter. Interact in any way you want. And we'll be back for another segment sometime soon. For now, this is Rob Tromp signing out.